comes to cars in America, it was love at first crank. Hollywood quickly learned it wouldn't take much to get car enthusiasts into theaters, resulting in decades of car-inspired cash grabs. In 2001, The Fast and the Furious became the latest auto-exploitation movie to roll off the line. Universal greenlit the film with a final budget of $42 million.
And it was killer.
And they were rewarded with a worldwide box office of over $200 million.
There's immediately talk of a sequel.
Fast and the Furious 2 was on.
So many movie franchises die at the sequel.
At the time, franchises were built off the backs of best-selling books and comic books. The Fast and the Furious, all it had was a script written by, well, a lot of people. The sequel had to be bigger.
Some of the best vehicular stuntmen out there.
The cars had to be faster.
I was like, dude, I'm going 100.
And the stunts had to be more elaborate.
It's a multi-million-dollar yacht. How do you jump a Camaro on it?
With the odds stacked against them.
There was no Vin Diesel, there was no Michelle Rodriguez, nobody.
And no guarantee of success.
What we heard was a car went over the bridge.
Every journey begins with a step, and every franchise begins with a sequel. With the wheels already turning in the direction of a sequel, Universal hoped to bring back the team from the first movie, starting with the writer, Gary Scott Thompson.
They signed me for the sequel at least a month before the movie opened, because they thought it was going to be a hit and they could get me cheaper. So I went off and I wrote 4 different treatments for the sequel, and then I wrote 2 or 3 drafts of the script.
But Universal hedged their bets and commissioned this up-and-coming duo to write a competing treatment.
Well, I remember this summer it came out.
I knew it had come out that summer and that it had done well, but I hadn't seen it.
And it's safe to say, they had a long road to even be considered for the sequel.
Back in the 90s, spec scripts were selling like hotcakes.
A spec script is a script written by a screenwriter, in the hopes of selling it later to a studio.
We wrote a spec script that Brad Pitt wanted to make into a movie.
It was called The Courier. It was going. Brad was attached, Gore Verbinski was attached to be the director. At the last second, Brad and Gore left to go make The Mexican instead.
Having lost their duel with the Mexican, Brad and Haas were down and out until...
Michael Brandt and I got a call from our agent, and he said, this summer there was a huge hit movie for Universal.
I didn't really think much about Fast and Furious in terms of something I would ever be a part of.
It seemed like a big dumb action movie.
But no way Brett and Haas would miss out on another opportunity to get a script to screen.
So we said no.
I remember my response was snarky. It was like, well, would I have to watch the first one? And I was putting it in the category of all like stupid car chase movies.
At which point their agent gave them a reality check.
This movie is coming out. It has a start date. You guys right now have written a couple of movies that didn't get made, and the difference between writing a movie that gets made and a movie that just sits on someone's shelf is huge.
After taking some solid career advice from their agent, it was time to buckle up, rev up their engines, then find a reasonable parking spot near Universal's screening room.
Universal screened the first movie for Derek and I.
And as the movie rolled, it was like, oh, this is way better than just what was in my head of what the movie was gonna be.
Finally, Brett and Haas began to see what millions around the world already knew.
The first race happened, and you went inside the engine and you came out the exhaust. And I remember saying, wow, that was cool, this is different. There was a culture to it, there was the family element to it. We really enjoyed watching the movie.
Suddenly, it hit them. They had a vision for the sequel.
And then it ended in such a way that we thought, oh, there's a sequel here. And Michael and I walking out into the parking lot said, what if, what if, what if?
Well, what if?
We had the conversation of, well, we're not going to do the second one. No, of course we're not going to do that. But if we were, we could set it in Miami.
And for now, disgraced cop Brian O'Connor.
He could be undercover.
And as for Dom, on the run from the law.
Could be in Mexico.
But how would he be spending his time?
We just had this idea that he was doing demolition derbies.
This is all while we're walking to our cars.
With the ideas flowing, they knew they were in.
And then we said, well, we're not going to do it, right? No, of course we're not going to do it. And we drove off. I called him from the 405. I was like, dude, I'm going 100. He's like, me too. It was the adrenaline and the excitement that you came out of the theater with.
And that's when they knew they were in.
And next thing you know, we're on the phone with Neil Moritz the next day talking about what it could be. And a year later, we're in Miami shooting the movie.
And as for Gary Scott Thompson's treatment.
By that point, I was in the middle of a first season of a TV series that had become a hit, and it was like 24/7 for me. I didn't give it much thought, actually.
So Gary was out and the new writers were in. But the clock was ticking as Universal wanted a draft as soon as possible.
We can't screw around. Write the movie now. That was kind of the marching order.
But there's an old adage in Hollywood, write what you know. So step one was to hit the streets to get some much-needed first-hand experience.
We went to San Diego, and we rode with some of the street racers. And they're all on walkie-talkies. Sure enough, the cops showed up.
We got cops, 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 cops!
Boom, they all disappeared. It was really fun. I could see doing a good version of the movie.
Even though the writers were ready to start burning rubber on the script, as we know, the Fast and the Furious and car culture itself isn't just about cars. It's about
Family.
But would they be able to reunite the one from the first movie?
The only person that was really attached was Paul Walker.
And although they couldn't bring back Jesse,
I always die. Always.
surely there couldn't be a Fast and the Furious sequel without Vin Diesel.
We conceived and wrote the script for Vin Diesel.
But long before there was a slew of XXX movies and Riddick projects, there was a time that Vin Diesel held himself to a higher standard and had no interest in ever doing a sequel.
This was still to him a time where you don't make sequels. Sequels are a bad idea.
While the future of Dom was in Vin Diesel's hands, Universal held the keys to the Fast and the Furious and were prepared to hit the road, with or without Dom.
Neil, Rob, and Vin got the offer to reteam.
Only, it wasn't for the Fast and the Furious. Instead, the offer was
to go do XXX.
And after butting heads with Universal, Brent and Haas got the news.
We found out that Vin and Rob Cohen, the original director, were dropping out.
Universal saw Paul Walker as the film's leading man, locking him into a sequel early on. Unfortunately, the same foresight wasn't applied to Vin Diesel's deal.
Suddenly, everyone involved with the movies, like In Demand, Revolution, who was behind XXX, predicted that maybe there was going to be some success with Fast and kind of got ahead of the game in getting in the Vin Diesel business.
I think we started shooting in August, and I think it was June. It was kind of solidified for us that he wasn't going to do it, and we had to figure out what we were doing. It was scramble mode.
This was as bad as wheels falling off a race car. Traditionally, a setback of that magnitude would call for a stop down, but the studio was relentless. As long as there were cameras and cars, there would be a Fast and the Furious 2.
You just move on. So yeah, there was disappointment. There was also like more of the, okay, we got to roll our sleeves up and figure this out, because we're making the movie without him.
But without Dom, they would have to come up with a new character to replace him. And the prospect of a Fast movie without Dom, well,
It scares the shit out of me.
Once we moved past the Dom character and wrote a draft for Roman Pierce, it didn't change very much at all. I remember saying, Brian put Roman in jail.
I did 3 years in jail.
In our minds, it could be Brian's friend from growing up, and we would just move the demolition derby to Barstow.
And just like that, they had their story. Too Fast, Too Furious would tell the tale of Brian O'Connor, reunited with his childhood friend, Roman Pierce, as they head to Miami to take down a drug lord for the FBI, along with all the racing that would entail, naturally.
I think 95% of the story that we originally pitched was in that first draft.
But there was still the matter of casting Roman. questions lingered whether any actor could truly fill Vin Diesel's shoes. Having lost Vin Diesel, Dominic Toretto was dropped from the Fast and the Furious sequel, and a new character was written to take his place. But before casting the role, Universal surprised everyone when they hired an Academy Award nominee as a director.
I just love that John Singleton directed a Fast movie.
John Singleton would be a game changer.
I'd done a couple of films already with John Singleton. I loved working with him. He's such a film auteur.
He was this legend who had done, you know, Boys in the Hood and was up for an Oscar at a very young age.
John Singleton is both the first African-American to be ever nominated for the Best Director Oscar, and he is now, and still, the youngest. That was a record up until that point that had been held by Orson Welles.
John would go on to make a series of highly respected films that continue to challenge Hollywood stereotypes. But one of his most beloved films also marked his return to South Central.
Baby Boy was a movie actually that was supposed to be done with Tupac.
But tragically,
Tupac died before the film could be materialized.
John set out to do the impossible, fill Tupac's shoes.
John came to me to find a replacement for Pac. I was like, okay. So I started the auditioning process. I thought about Tyrese.
The first time Kim cast Tyrese, she knew she had the real thing.
Tyrese got very popular from those Coca-Cola commercials where he was on the bus and singing.
That gave him a record deal.
Tyrese's debut album was a hit, selling over 1 million copies.
You know, here's John knowing about Tyrese's presence in the music world and pulling him into that space.
He just kept saying, you remind me of Tupac, you know, I'm gonna put you in a movie, you an actor, you a star. I mean, in my mind, I was a singer, man, you know?
But Tyrese had the charisma John Singleton wanted for the lead in his new film and invited him to audition for the role.
And I said, I think we need to do a screen test with him with some other actresses.
Walk, bitch, go get that broke down bike you got.
Keys right here, take it.
Now that screen test is running in the Academy Museum.
Even before its release, people were buzzing about Tyrese's performance in Baby Boy.
Stacey Snider, who was running Universal at the time, had seen Baby Boy and was like, who is this guy? We gotta work with this guy.
Universal Studios chairwoman Stacey Snider reached out to John Singleton, who was quick to praise the rising star.
He says, you better watch this kid. This kid's gonna be a star. I'm telling you, I know it.
Stacey had just one more question for John.
So if we put him in Too Fast, Too Furious, will you direct it? And John says yes.
And with that one question, Stacey Snider had locked the film's director and star. Or was it the other way around?
I actually got John Singleton the gig to direct Too Fast, Too Furious. People don't know that.
According to Tyrese,
Stacey Snider and Scott Stuber met with me after they watched the movie Baby Boy. He said, you know, you think you can do something like this, you know?
And naturally, he said yes.
Then they made a pivot into, hey man, what'd you think about John Singleton? I said, I love him. I mean, what can he do?
It was the question Tyrese was ready for.
You know, he knows how to pull performances out of people. You know, he can do action, he can do drama. Like, I was in there literally pitching and selling the shit out of my brother.
And it must have had an impact because ultimately, no matter who was responsible, Universal decided to pair the two together with John directing and Tyrese set to play a brand new character, Roman Pierce.
This is too good to be true. Am I being punked right now?
He turned out to be the perfect Roman Pierce. He was kind of the anti-Dom.
I gotta get you racing again so I can make some money off your ass.
I mean, Dom's cool. Dom's cool in a totally different way. And Roman is just out there.
This is done.
To ensure he wouldn't mimic any of Vin's acting choices, Tyrese will admit.
I've never seen The Fast and the Furious 1.
Which may seem shocking, but he had his reasons.
I did not have a deep voice at the time.
What are you smiling about?
I did not have those type of muscles. I did not have any of the things that Vin Diesel had. So in order for me to step into a role and bring my own thing to it, I was like, man, I'm not finna go study Michael Jordan before I replace him on the basketball team. And that was kind of it.
So with a fresh new character and a fresh point of view, Tyrese was officially on board. Firmly aware that the success of the film would rest on his and Paul's shoulders.
You know, there was no Vin Diesel, there was no Michelle Rodriguez, nobody.
But it wouldn't be all newcomers. Aside from Paul, there'd be at least one other returning cast member, as actor Tom Barry was set to reprise his role as Agent Bilkins.
We can make this all go away in the interest of justice. I was excited about it. I mean, being a part of a sequel, and Paul and I were the only ones back from the first one, so that was kind of neat.
The Fast and the Furious had linked tuner culture with the world of hip-hop, and Too Fast, Too Furious would be no exception.
It was always important for both John and the studio to have a music artist element.
So they'd once again turn to Ja Rule.
Too slow to make away with the money, man.
Who made a huge mistake.
Ja Rule told John Singleton he thought he was too big for the role.
With Ja Rule out, there was a hip-hop-sized hole left to fill in the sequel. Luckily, the writers had a solution.
We knew we wanted to have a character who was the mastermind of street racing in Miami.
To fill this new role, Kim started holding backstage auditions, starting with Ludacris.
He was gonna be in San Diego opening for Eminem. I got my camera equipment and I went to San Diego.
And so Ludacris ends up being put in this role. And this is Ludacris's first film.
And while Singleton was sold on Ludacris, Michael Brandt still had his doubts.
We did table read, and he was super mellow. I was a little concerned about, is this his energy level normally?
And even with Michael Brandt questioning Luda's chops, it seemed no one had any questions about the role of firebrand racer, Suki.
Bend over, boy.
Devin Aoki was one of my many auditions that I had. We gravitated to her pretty early on. I don't think I saw a whole lot of people for that role.
The character of Suki needed to keep pace with Paul Walker, and Devin was off to a great start.
It was important to us in that first race where Brian's kind of leaving everybody behind. He's gonna beat her, obviously, but it was with like this respect.
And while Devin Aoki earned the cast and crew's respect, she still had to earn the respect of Universal.
We had to approve her costume. And right as we're taking pictures,
there's a busload of kids driving by.
And these kids are
hanging out the windows, like yelling and screaming.
And here's Suki in front of this pink convertible, you know, wearing the outfit that she was gonna wear. That sold the studio.
And while the studio was sold on Devin Aoki, John Singleton was sold on actress Eva Mendes for the role of undercover cop Monica Fuentes.
She was great. She was always up for everything and wanted to do the stunts with the guys.
Both you girlies shut up.
And for the villain of the film, Kim Harden had a surprising choice in mind.
Idris Elba, ay, ay, ay. I had only seen him in the pilot of The Wire.
What'd you think?
I brought Idris in, and he started talking with this British accent. I was like, oh, I didn't know you were British. I sent the tape to John, and he laughed at me.
He ultimately went with Cole Hauser for the villain.
You got balls, kid.
But there's no way he'd miss out on any other future superstars.
I had brought in Channing Tatum to audition. And John was just like, okay, fine, you can cast him, he's a guy.
Kim gave Channing his first big break, then took it back.
And John calls me and said, wait, hold up. I think the studio wants to go in another direction. They want to kind of see what roles we can bring in some more Asians. And I had to find another actor.
With a diverse cast led by Paul Walker, the sequel to Fast and the Furious looked ready to go. That was until they saw what they were driving.
When Tyrese saw it, paraphrasing, oh, hell no, I ain't driving no.
With the cast for the Fast and the Furious sequel in place, it was time for the real casting, the cars.
What are we driving?
They wanted to see the Nissan Skylines. It wound up being Paul Walker's car.
But Too Fast, Too Furious would need a lot more than Paul's Skyline. Craig had a lot of credit and contacts in the tuner world, and he would need all of them.
We did a casting call in Santa Monica initially, and we were expecting about 150 cars. 700 cars showed up. And we were walking blocks to see cars.
The cars are just as much a character in these films as the people themselves. Auditioning the cars and making sure the right ones were on their way, that was very important to John Singleton.
This could get addicting.
Pairing the driver and car was key. And for the lead actors, they would hold sway in the decision.
Don't even think about taking the convertible.
The production designer had a car that he painted purple.
They did a yellow interior when Tyrese saw it, paraphrasing, oh, hell no, I ain't driving no Lakers car.
But after the success of the first film, Universal wasn't taking any chances with the sequel. Any decision had to go through them.
They were changing things so fast, I needed a body shop, a paint shop.
So David Martyr took matters into his own hands.
David Martyr found a Ford dealership that had just closed down.
And so I leased it. And I hired all the painters that were getting pink slipped, and I had my own body shop and paint shop.
It was a far cry from the duct tape and chewing gum approach of the first film.
The first one was, hey, this is what you can have because this is what we can get for cheap.
Too Fast, Too Furious, I call up Nitrous Express. I say, I need 34 carbon fiber nitrous oxide bottles here in 2 days, no problem. And a truck backs up.
Lastly, they would need some cop cars, which came with its own unique set of challenges.
We bought a whole fleet of 40 Miami police cars. We find bullets in them, we find drugs in them, we find all kinds of stuff.
The cast, the crew, the cars were set to take Miami by storm.
Miami has this reputation, right, of being sexy, the club scene and the nightlife scene. If you took this movie out of Miami and you put it someplace else, it wouldn't resonate the same way.
For writers Brant and Haas, it was an especially momentous occasion, as it was only their second film to enter production.
My film school was getting to watch a $90 million sequel get made in Miami, Florida.
Before principal photography began, Brant and Haas got the opportunity to watch Singleton in his element.
John had almost a week scheduled where we were watching the actors kind of imbue their parts.
He put them through boot camps, having them live that character.
And we're just listening, watching.
John Singleton forced me to watch at least 15 movies before I did Baby Boy. We never watched anything before Too Fast, Too Furious.
John wanted his actors to know their characters, but to be raw and prepared for anything.
I do improv, and I do it all day, every day. It drives a lot of directors crazy because I'm like, yo, this dialogue don't make no sense.
But not John, who told Tyrese,
you funny as hell, and we finally gonna put your funny to use. And I was like, cool.
The cast and crew was not ready for anything. But as production kicked off, there was one thing they hadn't accounted for.
The first thing we shot was we were on top of the Miami Herald building.
The roof was tar, and so it's just the sun unabated beating down.
It was the scene where Bilkins is first questioning Brian O'Connor.
And Tom Wood, very quickly, had problems to deal with.
Something happened on that rooftop, man. I was allergic to something, and my eyes were like just bloodshot. I mean, you think like, oh, this guy's got something. Get away from him,
Fortunately for Tom, back in the edit suite, John reconsidered the need for the scene.
I wasn't surprised when they didn't keep the shot.
But Tom would remain a big part of the movie, going on to play a pivotal role in the fight sequence that introduces Tyrese Gibson's character, Roman Pierce.
Whoa! I love when Bilkins is eating the popcorn watching the two of them fight in the dirt at the demolition derby.
What the hell are you doing here? I'm gonna choke you. I told you to stay.
I went over, sat down, and watching fight. And all right.
The scene played into the bigger theme of family emerging in the franchise. The two had known each other since they were kids and had gone down separate paths with bad blood spilt.
Really doesn't come across so much as a fist fight as it comes across as two old friends getting past whatever it is that's been in the way.
A sign of the genuine friendship that was brewing on and off camera.
I'm almost sure he wanted to do the second movie with Vin Diesel, but that man made me feel completely warm, welcomed, and amazing.
But John Singleton wasn't interested in directing for the Hallmark Channel. He knew this film needed guts. Luckily, the writers had just the solution.
There's the scene where they put the rat on the guy's chest and they put the bucket over it.
Get it off me!
We met this Army general. We asked him, what's the worst torture you had heard of? And he was like, oh, you put a rat on someone, they put a bucket on him, and then they heat up the bucket. Rat only has one way to go, right?
When we were shooting, he's like, I got a great idea. One of the bad guys is gonna take the rat and put it in the alley when the scene's over. He goes, don't you get it? It's an alley rat.
And I'm like, yeah. That's the worst part, that it's an alley reptile.
The difference in humor aside, the scene would not have been nearly as effective had John not brought his unique eye to the shoot.
I think John handles that in a very interesting way in the film, and I think it's also to see the Eva Mendes character having registered such disgust and disdain for doing that, but having to play along with it. John balances that so well.
And while John nailed the drama of the rat scene, he would offer the two young writers opportunities to leave their mark during production as well.
Everyone has input, you know, that's the way John works.
I think that has everything to do with the fact that John himself is a screenwriter and knows what it means to film your work.
When the young writers approached John, he took what they said to heart. And right now, they were saying,
man, we don't have enough racing in this movie. And this is after we'd started shooting.
Production on Fast and the Furious 2 was well underway when the writers noticed a little problem.
We realized, man, we don't have enough racing in this movie.
And for a sequel to a race film, this was indeed a misstep.
So we, John, Michael, and I got on the phone when we were like, I think we should write, you know, a new sequence.
I mean, we're gonna have to pull something out of our ass.
John agreed, but when the trio approached Universal with their new street race, they got an unexpected reaction.
We can't pull off what you guys have written. We don't have the money for it. We have to shoot it in one night, and I think what we had written was 3 or 4 nights.
But luckily...
But I'm like, I have an idea, and I'm gonna go to the trailer, and I'll be back.
Michael's idea, a combination of tag and chicken, 2 childhood games with a distinctively adult twist.
We wrote that in one night. We got it all boarded, and I think we shot it like 4 weeks later.
But bringing the page to screen wasn't always writing scenes in the night. Sometimes it involved tossing the script entirely.
They had a long dialogue scene.
So you used to be a cop.
It didn't work. I remember saying, you know, maybe we should just cut the dialogue. And that turned into the Stare and Drive, and that all kind of happened that day.
But what is now remembered as a Fast and Furious classic wasn't just as easy as stopping actors talking, which isn't easy anyway.
Where Tyrese was coming in for a landing and parking, and where Brian and Eva Mendes were parking, it just kept not lining up.
Luckily, Tyrese, knowing he had his director's trust, decided to add a little something.
He did the Stare and Drive on you, didn't he? He got that from me.
All I did at the end of the scene was put a button on it.
John encouraged them to speak as the characters, to say things the characters would say. I think all of that really speaks to John's narrative influence, because you can see that, the kind of relaxed nature that Tyrese has.
I am king of finding the joke. What is the joke? How do you land it? How do you make sure that your voice is getting you all that you need?
And Tyrese wasn't the only thing to be unleashed, especially when it came to Ludacris's first scene, which, if you recall, Michael had some doubts about.
Is this his energy level normally?
But those concerns were quickly put to bed.
There's a big shot of him walking out, and then you see the whole world. They called action, and I'm looking at the monitor, and I see the afro.
All right, fire him up!
And I'm like, oh, this is not the same dude from the table read.
That's what I'm talking about, man.
But performances from actors was far from the only thing on Universal's mind. They wanted the sequel to be bigger and more thrilling. The races were faster, the villains were more sinister, and the stunts were bigger. Boom! Boom! Boom!
Boom! I did stunts on Fast and Furious 2, and the people I was working with are some of the best vehicular stuntmen out there.
This is where we see John at his most auteur, really playing with camera angles and giving us these wonderful shots of these cars. You can tell that he's having a lot of fun doing it.
And the man behind the stunts that fueled said fun, who can explain how they did it, is stunt legend Terry Leonard.
Our success is our anonymity. You don't tell people what we do.
Unless you're being interviewed for Icons Unearthed.
When you're on the set with Terry, you're gonna do some stunts that are hairy, and you better sell it. You do it, you take the hit, you hit hard. If it hurts, you hide it.
Sammy and Terry and the stunt team were very busy, handling all manner of dangerous stunts. But for some stunts, even the guys who concocted them didn't really think they were possible.
I remember having the idea that one car could jump over another. And there were other people saying, well, no, that's physically not possible. And we had Matchbox cars out and like a piece of cardboard. I was demonstrating how I thought it could work. It seemed ridiculous because in the first movie, they just raced straight down the street. And now we're talking about jumping over a bridge. The idea that the bridge jump, that one car could jump over another, I fought for.
Fighting for it paid off. While the stunt team agreed to try Michael Brandt's idea, not all the stunt drivers were cleared for takeoff.
I wanted to do it, but of course they said no. Because it was a convertible, they couldn't put me in a hang harness. That kind of a hit and that kind of a car would have probably broken my back.
But without a stunt driver, the team would have to get a little more creative for Suki's convertible.
Suki's S2000 was piloted by a remote control system. They rigged up a system so they could push in the clutch pedal and then launch the car in second gear.
And as for the car holding the camera,
they had this Dodge Durango as the chase car.
With the ramp set up for the jump and remotely controlling Suki's convertible, they'd send it over. As for the camera car, it would safely come to a stop at the top of the ramp.
The problem is, the brakes on a 5,000-pound Dodge Durango are not as good as the brakes on a Honda S2000. The S2000 goes up the ramp, it sails off and lands on the other side, and they jam on the brakes to get this car to stop, and it just goes off the edge.
And I remember being with Neil Moritz, and his phone blew up, and he said there was an accident.
So we were shooting in downtown Miami. While that's going on, Stunts is doing the jump the bridge sequence.
When the unexpected occurs.
And I remember being with Neil Moritz, and his phone blew up, and he said there was an accident.
What we heard was a car went over the bridge. We had no idea how bad this was.
And then we raced over there, and yes, some car had not cleared it all the way, and the accident could have been a lot worse.
If that drawbridge had been open to the sea, meaning that there was nothing underneath it, they would have probably wound up upside down in the canal. That could have been bad.
Wow. I guess they kept that on the wraps. I didn't hear about it either until now.
Brandt and Haas took a valuable lesson from the experience.
I remember that being like a really scary moment of like, oh, okay, let's remind ourselves here that there are people doing these things.
And so, logically, the next step would be for Brandt to ask the stunt team to run over a car with an 18-wheeler.
Terry Leonard said, we can do this car going under a semi gig. There's no way. Like, how are you going to pull that off?
Well, here's how.
He brings a chalkboard. He's got all the drivers. He brings his little cars, and he makes us go through that sequence over and over again till we understand it.
Hire the right people and make sure that the scene does not overmatch the abilities of everybody that you have. And that's why they hire guys like myself to make that judgment.
And Terry's judgment led him right to Sammy Malouf.
I was the cat in the convertible Corvette. The Mustang went through the other two trucks and they banged. Then what they did is they took this Mustang and they cabled it to the back of the 18-wheeler. I'm doing 55 miles an hour. The next thing we're supposed to hear is we're releasing the car. I don't get that message. Boom, and I heard the car fall. And I throttled down in the Corvette.
And Sammy ends up turning the Corvette over.
That was a happy accident. It was really never supposed to flip.
But for guys like Sammy and Terry,
I call it a happy accident.
It's just another day at the office.
Yeah, there was a lot of stunt guys crashing cars.
And sometimes not just the stunt guys crashing.
It's safe to say that Paul Walker was a big fan of driving the Skyline.
Paul was a hell of a driver.
But to be safe, they trained him in a touch more ability.
They set up a road course in a parking lot, and they had professional drivers teaching him how to drive.
With his training complete.
One night, Paul Walker decided that he would like to do this stunt.
Oh, but not just any stunt.
He wanted to do something called an e-brake turn. It's a rite of passage among all young men. Get going real fast, grab the e-brake, and then turn the car sideways.
It wasn't a big stunt, but you kind of slide the car in.
But for a stunt like this, Paul Walker would need permission.
I can tell you horror stories about movies that have been shut down because the lead actor got hurt. You can't let that happen.
And he talked John Singleton into doing it. It was a simple stunt.
He can drift the car and it go up and he'd smile right to the camera.
And so, to no one's surprise when the big day came.
He nailed it. Everybody's cheering for him and all that kind of stuff.
But it was a short-lived celebration.
Next scene, he's got to take off because the cops are coming. Goes around the corner a little too fast.
Paul slid the car in and took out a parking meter, which also took out all the front-end suspension on the Skyline.
And things like that happen.
And a quick-thinking John Singleton happened to know exactly what to do.
That was an accident, but they were shooting it, and so it stayed in the film.
Singleton pivoted and, changed the scene so that, he crashes. That's why the cops catch him.
Let me see your hands. Put them up. That was a happy accident.
Paul Walker's terrible parking created not only a great new ending for the scene, but it also created a major problem.
Now, remember, there are no parts for this car in the United States. So what do?
The crew had 5 prop versions of the Japanese super sedan, but to turn them into real cars, they'd need spare parts.
This was on a Friday night, and Monday, all 5 cars had to be operational. We called England, which was the closest parts. The Skyline guy got the parts to FedEx, and then I get a phone call from Nigel from FedEx that you missed the last flight to the States.
And so, with Nigel from FedEx in his ear, and a deep desire to avoid a costly failure, David made an offer to Nigel, the FedEx guy.
I needed the parts. I gave him round-trip tickets. He flew him to Miami.
So with Nigel delivering parts, David gave Nigel a part.
I put him in the movie. He saw the Dallas Cowboy cheerleaders. He stayed in South Beach. All that was cheaper than not having the car.
And all that because Paul Walker wanted to do a very easy stunt, of which, on this movie, there were few. When it was time for the professional stunt drivers to go to work, they asked questions like,
it's a multi-million-dollar yacht. How do you jump a Camaro on it?
Well, the scriptwriters had some ideas.
We were saying it would be cool if the boat thinks it's got a clean exit, and then out of nowhere comes the car.
And to this, Terry Leonard said,
whoa, we can't do it here. That's when the arguments start.
Therefore, production briefly paused to ponder a pivotal question.
Well, can a car take down a boat?
Also.
And how ridiculous is that for a car to take down a boat?
Super expensive shot. It's a multi-million-dollar yacht. How do you jump a Camaro on it?
We were saying it would be cool if the boat thinks it's got a clean exit and there's nothing but trees, kind of like in Apocalypse Now when the lion comes out of the trees and scares the hell out of everybody.
Well, in fact, it was a tiger, not a lion, and someone on set knew that.
Terry Leonard said, I was the one standing there when the tiger came out.
We're like, whoa, you were on Apocalypse Now. You were the guy holding the line. He's like, you're goddamn right I was holding that. I was holding the chain and it was dragging me through the dirt. And we're like, well, I guess we should do it.
And so Terry Leonard set about planning this action-packed stunt.
I think one of the most memorable scenes, it's gotta be the car on the boat scene. I mean, because it's preposterous.
But the key to landing this stunt, if you will, wasn't quite as simple as flying a car through the sky and landing it on a boat. Or maybe it was.
We jumped that Camaro 140 feet out into the ocean.
I'm watching that Camaro fly through the air, I'm going, wow.
And then it lands on the boat.
Right. But Terry's plan could only really come together in the edit bay.
You can't film too much of it because it's a giveaway. It's a cheat. But if you look at it in the movie, in the sequence of how they edited it together, you see, wow.
I'm sure we ruined that boat. We probably ruined the car too.
But unlike the '69 Camaro, this movie had to float above water. And with production ending, Universal had one question on their mind. Would audiences turn up for a sequel without Vin Diesel? Production on the Fast and the Furious sequel had wrapped. And while the edit came together, there was still the not-so-small matter of a title, but that was news to Derek Haas.
For the longest time, this movie was The Fast and Furious 2. We learned about it a month ahead of time. The poster comes out and it says Too Fast, Too Furious. I love that that became its own meme pre-memes.
Memes or otherwise, John made it a point to set a tone for the film right from the title.
John brought in the neon look and just the excitement that a main title can do to start the audience off.
Even Universal got in on the fun.
right when the movie comes on, the Universal logo does a hydraulic drop. It completely sets the stage for that film.
But with the title in hand and opening weekend around the corner, pressure started to mount.
Well, there's always more pressure on a sequel, without question. We already saw it, so why do we want to see it again?
So many movie franchises die at the sequel.
What was great was it went in a different direction.
But the question everybody wanted to know when Too Fast, Too Furious premiered on June 6, 2003 was, which direction would the box office figures go?
Friday night, it comes out. By Saturday morning, you check the internet and you see whether or not it's gonna be a hit or whether you fell on your face.
But they knew right away that like a car launching towards a boat, Too Fast, Too Furious landed with an astounding impact. And its opening weekend was huge.
That film changed my life, man.
It was our first 50 million opening weekend.
And this sequel that many thought should never be made, not only made money, it made history.
At the time, that was the highest grossing film for a black director.
Everything was white in Hollywood. The Fast and the Furious was the only film that had a cast that literally disrupted Hollywood.
Forging a new path for Fast and Furious movies to come.
I think it becomes so important to have two black characters in this film that are not on the periphery, that are not in the background, that are very much so a part of the narrative.
There is no better director for Too Fast, Too Furious. Without John Singleton, there would be no Roman Pierce. Funny, humor would have never happened.
It gave everybody an opportunity to see a new avenue that the Fast and Furious could go down.
And thanks to John Singleton, with Michael and Derek, a family reunion in Fast 3 was looking more and more likely.
The second one went so well, there was definitely interest from Universal and Neil for us to keep going.
Whichever way you looked at it, Too Fast, Too Furious was a roaring success.
I thought we kicked ass. I said, this is gonna do better than the first one.
And in every way, Too Fast, Too Furious did. That is, until you compare the budgets of the first and second movie.
On the second one, our budget went to 80 million.
Then things look a little bit different.
It didn't completely lose money.
First one did 211. Too Fast, Too Furious did $236 million.
Which is more, of course. And although Too Fast, Too Furious did build on the movie's first audience, it didn't double it. And to be fair, it wasn't exactly loved by everyone.
As soon as we saw 2, we went, oh, that's too bad.
It definitely didn't do as well critically as the first one.
And so after crunching the numbers, Universal started to wonder, was it such a successful sequel after all?
You don't greenlight a third movie if you're losing money. That wouldn't make sense.
But one thing was for sure. If there was going to be a third Fast and Furious movie, the bar had been set high, very high. Topping this would be very expensive. So any de-escalation of action and or quality might have the fledgling franchise heading straight into a dead end. And the Fast and the Furious 3 heading straight to DVD.
Actually, we're looking at this as like a $10 million straight to DVD type movie.